Chapter 27 Auld Lang Syne. The rescue was a huge success, but the heroes showed their amateur credentials in the aftermath. The soldiers that Kara had freed quickly relayed word of Lex's attempted escape to those in charge, and a swarm of soldiers conducted a fast and thorough search of the grounds surrounding the facility. In a matter of minutes, they managed to capture Lex and his gang, but they also caught Cookie and Eric waiting for their chance to escape from the pickup truck. The distracted couple gave inconsistent accounts of why they were at the well-guarded, top-secret military site during an international crisis, so they were escorted to a rather impressive-looking FBI car. Apparently, when nukes are involved, law enforcement doesn't mess around. Kara and Alex and a woozy Lena watched helplessly from a distance while their friends were put in handcuffs and driven away. The Danvers sisters helped Lena back into the Porsche, intending to follow their friends covertly, but before they could even open the car doors, Kara saw that they weren't alone. In an instant, they were surrounded by FBI agents. Unlike Cookie and Eric, they kept their mouths shut rather than lie, but to the same effect, they were escorted into an FBI car and driven away. For the second time that night, our heroes were reunited at a police station, but this time they were grilled by FBI agents who were much less friendly than the local police. After all, as far as the agents could tell, Lex had recruited a bunch of teens to execute his criminal plans. But the FBI proved to be very good at putting pieces together, and within an hour, all 5 teens were escorted out of the police station and into an FBI van. This van was much nicer than Lex's. The interior was designed almost like a small conference room, with bench seats on the sides and a long thin table that could be unfolded up on the floor. Several tiny notebook computers were piled in a corner, suggesting this wasn't where the FBI usually held prisoners. The teens were left alone in the room, uncuffed, for what felt like a long time, before a female agent came through the back of the van and closed the door behind her. She was dressed in an all-black uniform and looked totally badass. She made a big impression on Alex, who would want to dress like her ever since. The 5 friends were intimidated as the agent stood over them, but then she took a seat, bringing herself down to their level. She opened a folder and withdrew 5 freshly printed documents that reeked of laser toner. Then, as she leafed through the sheets one at a time, she spoke to each of the teens in turn.
So you are Lena Thurul, aka Lena Luthor, sister of public enemy number 1 and one of very few verified true telepaths. And you are Eric Dominello, another of Luthor's orphanage survivors, suspected also to possess telepathic powers, though the details are sketchy. Next, we have Cookie Clifford, daughter of a high-profile attorney, and Alexandra Danvers, daughter of noted researchers of Krypton. And finally, her adopted sister, Kara Danvers, whose file is stamped classified 3 times, and it was a bitch to get a clearance to decrypt it, but now that we know that you are Superman's cousin, your little adventure all makes more sense. Then, she added with a chuckle as she sifted through the folder, "There are a lot of fascinating relationships here."
The teens all felt uneasy, worrying how much of their private lives were contained in these FBI files. No doubt that it was the agent's purpose to remind them who had the upper hand. But with that established, the agent shifted gears and made 3 points clear. Number 1, no charges would be pressed against the teens. Number 2, the country was in their debt for helping stop a disaster they could barely even imagine. Number 3, the most important thing she wanted to make clear was that the heroes needed to keep a low profile and not draw any attention to themselves. They had stumbled into some seriously classified activities, so they were strongly encouraged to never speak of their role in protecting the country to anyone and to keep their histories and abilities to themselves. The last point didn't square very well with the first 2 points, but the agent sweetened the deal by pulling another sheet of paper from the folder, and she held it up, framing in her hands for them to admire. It was a simple black and white photograph of Lex's face, probably copied from a mugshot, with the words "Wanted" stamped on top and $1 million promised on the bottom.
This will be yours,
she tantalized.
since you were so helpful in the safe capture of Lex Luthor. Of course, you will have to split it 5 ways, and since you are all high school students, most of your reward will be kept in trust until your 18th birthdays. But we'll give you a taste of it now, and in a few years, you'll have a free ride through college. But for now, here's the official version of what happened. None of you saw Lex Luthor tonight. None of you were in his van. None of you were at the police station. None of you were on Signal Hill. None of you were illegally behind the wheel of a Porsche. And of course, none of you were here talking with the FBI. You spent the night in Miss the Rules' home, had a fun time doing whatever you kids like to do. Got that?
She said, fixing her eyes on Kara, who was the only person who didn't seem totally on board. Alex immediately answered for Kara, sounding a little like her mother.
Don't worry, she'll be fine.
The FBI took care of everything from that point, making sure the teens had no trouble getting back to the quiet, normal, angst-filled lives of the students at Leesburg High. Several agents drove the teens home, debriefed their parents, and got the local police on board with the program. They even filled Superman in on the plan and teased him by saying that his cousin and her friends had pulled off what he had failed to do during the past 5 months that Lex was at large. Eliza had given the police a piece of her mind when she had arrived at the station and found that they had let her daughter simply walk out the front door. She had driven home, preparing a tongue-lashing for both girls, but the house was empty. Then she had driven aimlessly around town, worried about where they might be, before finally returning to the police station, losing her mind. One policeman had the gall to say that they had more important things on their agenda than tracking down their daughters, but then a more senior, very tired-looking officer took Eliza aside and told her that he was just informed of where her daughters were, and that they were okay, and that they would be returned home within a couple of hours. Kara and Alex were nervous when they finally returned home that night, but the FBI had debriefed Eliza before they arrived, and she was relatively cool about everything that had happened. Clearly, the FBI let her in on some of the facts, but not everything, and they encouraged everyone not to talk about it. That was good, because if they ever started talking about how Alex drove without a license, or how Kara used all of her powers out in the open, the mood would change really fast. Eliza let the girls sleep in the next morning, and did they ever sleep? They were still in bed when Eliza returned home from work. They only woke up for an early dinner, an hour together on the computer, and then a few hours in each other's arms, curled up on the couch watching television, before they went to sleep again. Eliza was patient through all of this. She only wished she could get as much rest herself, after so much worrying the night before. They all woke up early on Saturday morning, and Eliza was determined to make the last weekend of 2006 a happy one. Using some of the girls' early reward money, Eliza drove her daughters to the mall and supervised a whirlwind back-to-school shopping spree to replenish their aging wardrobes. Alex was fixated on black, trying to make herself look exactly like the FBI agent that so impressed her. Eliza shrugged, preferring a brighter look for her daughter, but she saved her negativity for Kara's choices. Kara, as always, liked the short skirts and cute sweaters, but this time she also wanted that same tank top that was destroyed when she fell out of the sky. Eliza would have none of that, because none of Kara's choices adhered to the new dress code their school had adopted, and which Lena had condemned as fascist. In turn, Kara complained about Eliza's choices, but Eliza seemed to delight in reminding Kara how the FBI wanted them to blend in. All students were required to wear shirts with collars and sleeves, with no designs of any kind, not even a brand label. Skirts were to be strictly measured, and this time there were no underwear loopholes. Kara showed no interest in pants of any kind, so Eliza pushed Kara into choosing brightly colored knee-length skirts, which she could only be allowed to wear with opaque tights. She also pushed Kara to trying on a long-sleeved button-up blouse, but Alex came to Kara's defense, and they finally settled on a few blouses with short sleeves.
Before long, it was clear that Kara was not having nearly as good a time as Alex was buying clothes, so Eliza decided to try something different. She drove the girls to a tech store where they could pick out their own cell phones to replace the nearly obsolete flip phone that was lost over the highway. Alex had drooled over the new Motorola Q phone ever since Cookie had shown her phone off months ago, when she was still part of Cookie's clique. So, Alex chose the black model, and Kara got the same phone in silver. As much as Eliza wanted to spend time with her girls, she could not ignore the far-off look in their eyes. As soon as the girls started charging their phones, they were urgently trying to store Lena and Eric's phone numbers. So when their friend showed up at Eliza's house unannounced, and Kara and Alex looked up at her with puppy eyes, Eliza waved them out the door, saying, "Please, be careful this time." Eliza had invited Lena, Cookie, and Eric over for New Year's Eve. Cookie's parents had their own plans, so it was just the original four hanging out at the cozy Danvers homestead, watching TV in the living room while Eliza served them food and pretended not to listen to their conversations while Eliza was in the other room. Eric was feeling a little down because Cookie wasn't there to celebrate the first night, and the two had become very attached during the rescue. The girls were doing everything they could to cheer him up, because that's what friends do, but with the added incentive that a bummed-out Eric was a real bummer to be around. So Eric had plenty of girls fawning over him, even if the girl that mattered most wasn't there. Until that night at Signal Hill, everyone had their opinions about who Eric should be with. Lena had thought that Eric and Kara were a good match. Kara and Alex had both thought Lena and Eric were meant for each other. Nobody in a million years would have picked Cookie as his match. But nobody doubted Cookie's amazing turnaround anymore either, and nobody had any confusion about what caused the change. Eric's power had awakened a part of Cookie that few had believed existed. Even Cookie herself admitted it, and she was probably just as upset as Eric that they were being kept apart that night. On the television, the broadcast broke away from various diversions when the clock hit 11:57, and the arrival of the new year was imminent. Kara looked at Eric. She could see the sadness on his face before she could feel it spreading throughout the room, and she regretted that even with her powers, there was nothing she could do to help her friends be together. But then suddenly, it occurred to her she did have the power to help them be together. She ran into her room and was back on the sofa at inhuman speed, so now everyone was looking at her as she handed her telephone to Eric. "Do you know Cookie's phone number?" Kara asked. Eric shook his head, embarrassed. Lena took the phone from his hand, typed in the number, then gave it back. It was now 11:59. "Cookie?" Eric said, with a voice full of affection, making her name sound like an endearment. "Yeah, I'm watching too. It's so good to hear your voice." Now, all 5 friends were together on a sofa meant for 3. Eric hugged his best friend Lena with one arm while he talked to his special friend on the phone, and Kara and Alex kissed long and deeply as the new year arrived. Kara thought that New Year's Day was way too short. For the first time since they had potentially saved the world, all 5 of them had the whole day together without any parents playing chaperone. They spent most of the day at Cookie's home, and she was so happy to have everyone over that she wrapped up late Christmas presents for everyone. For Kara, she had folded up every dress, skirt, and even lingerie that Kara had shown interest in when they were dressing Kara up before the rescue. She included a t-shirt that made Kara laugh. On the attached card, she wrote, "This barely compensates for the gift you have given me, and I'm not talking about the gold coin." For Alex, Cookie had wrapped up a new, top-of-the-line laptop to replace the computer she had stolen a month before. On the card, she wrote, "I'm so sorry about everything. Please let me start to apologize with this offering. The original computer was broken, but my dad copied all of the files to this computer.
For Lena, she gave a gold necklace with a little platinum witch riding a broom for a pendant. On the card, she wrote, "For the girl with the X-ray mind, can you read my mind now? Thank you forever for forgiving me, even when I didn't deserve it." Tears streamed down Lena's eyes when she saw the gift, and she rushed over to embrace Cookie. Kara, Alex, and Eric all looked at each other, wondering what the little witch pendant meant. But alas, only Lena among them could read minds, so that would remain a secret between Lena and Cookie. Finally, Eric opened his gift, revealing an antique wooden Pinocchio doll. Like the others, he read the card aloud.
"Hold this toy over your heart, and I know he'll come alive, because that's exactly what you have done for me, and now I am completely yours."
Eric did as instructed and feigned disappointment when the wood remained wood, but then he pulled Cookie to his heart instead and poured his magic directly into her. They spent the rest of the day playing dress-up, Wii games, and eating way too much delivery food. Kara could not be happier. But as the day was coming to an end, they sat together watching TV and started talking about going back to school tomorrow, and for the first time, Kara realized that for the entire semester she would have no classes with any of her friends. None. They would be with each other 3 times per day, once when they arrived at school, then when they ate, and finally when they left. Of course, Kara would have Alex every other time of the day, and they could always meet after school and on weekends, but Kara was already feeling lonely, just thinking about how much time they would be spending apart. Of course, Kara would have Alex every other time of the day, and they could always meet after school and on weekends. But Kara was already feeling lonely from just thinking of how much time they would be spending apart.